they had maybe they thought something about the economics, or they had some other interesting criticisms of them. But for the most part, they're well received, which was good news for us. Yeah, clear goals and success points. We had a lot of different questions for Mirror Group members and lots of surveys about people talk about making guidelines effective and reaching your goals and having strategic plans. And so we asked a lot of questions about that. And overall response we kept getting back is that you need to have clear goals for that and a vision. So again, that's where our recommendations started to form, where we said, okay, where's the vision in your documents then? And what does this take us to? Sadly, and what we think for further research, one of the biggest challenges we had was discussing the concept of prioritization questions for people. It was an unbelievable range of answers to that, ranged purely from the concept that it's all about the finance to some risk management stuff, and it kind of became out of the scope of our research, but something that we would highly recommend that another part of this program take on is challenging how those 3 prioritization questions can be developed and be effectively leveraged. So, right. So here's basically what we kind of came up with as our 3 big points and recommendations. And we started by doing them not just for ISO, but as a generic set of recommendations for any people working in SR or anybody trying to build a SR guideline of some type. So the first one is that they need to acknowledge that organizations are within and dependent on the environment for their long-term viability to effectively address both social and environmental sustainability issues, right? And you can see how the results from our surveys correlate with that. The next one is that they need to have a systems thinking and proactive strategic framework that can backcast from a clear success point of a sustainable society. That requires them, therefore, to set that goal, to have systems thinking, and have a strategic framework. Otherwise, how are they ever going to reach their aims and goals? The next one is to have a set of non-overlapping science-based principles, definitions of a sustainable society. And this is a really interesting point that we really tried to get to, is this consensus building. And I think this is a big challenge in all emerging industries or whatever. When you have different people from different camps talking in different terms, we think one of the big strengths of the principles is that it builds consensus by having a unified definition. And so if ISO is going to be a global standard, or if you're trying to build a global standard for social responsibility, the critical thing is to try to lock in definitions, basically. Yeah, so that's kind of where we came out here. So, right, ISO. So this is where we kind of came in together to how this relates to the case study.
So ISO 26000, our main case study. Just to give you a little bit of details on it. The title is, it's a guidance on social responsibility. So it's not what you're used to seeing with ISO, which is like ISO 14000, which is an environmental checklist where you get certified and you're environmentally friendly. In this case, you're not going to get a stamp that you're socially responsible. It's just a guide to help companies, for all organizations, to give them sort of like a jumping ground off what they can do. And this could potentially lead off to certification programs and other things. Target publication date, it's set up for 2010. And the coordinators is the Swedish Standards Institute. We've been working with them, but they're also involved with the Brazilians down there. Right?
The Brazilians.
The
That guy in the back with sunglasses.
So this is ISO 26000's definition of social responsibility. So I'll quickly read it, which is responsibility of an organization for the impacts of its decisions and activities on society and the environment through transparent and ethical behavior that is consistent with sustainable development and the welfare of society. So a couple of things that we noticed from this right off the bat was that the society is separate from the environment. And so one of our recommendations is to even just change "and the" to "within the environment," just to show a little bit more of that. And that second point with the definition is that it says that it's consistent with sustainable development and the welfare of society, but sustainable development is ultimately the welfare of society, so it's kind of saying it's consistent with welfare of society and the welfare of society. So that's sort of one of the things.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So basically in the guidelines right now, it is a working draft still, so these things all will change, and maybe this diagram is no longer valid as of tomorrow, I don't know. But for the most part, they've used this kind of a diagram to express how they see the concept of social responsibility. And right off the bat, we see some fundamental kind of concerns here. One is that these are what they call their 7 core issues of social responsibility. And as you can see, the environment is just one of them. So my concern there, and our concern right off the bat with our research findings, is that if you just make the environment just one of them, and then an organization says, okay, we're going to have to attack these issues, well, maybe they spend the next 5 years working on consumer issues, contributing to society and fair operating practices, but they don't even need to look at the environment, right? So there's lack of systems thinking there. And it lacks the concept of the system in the biosphere concept, right? So this is where we started to kind of, and what I'm going to do is show a progression of diagrams. Not that all these diagrams are something we're recommending to ISO or to other things, but we found it helped explain some of our main ideas. So this one most of you have seen before, and it's kind of goes back to that question we had the point before about organizations and society being within the environment. And it's kind of a fundamental core concept of SSD, and does show quite a difference from the one before. So we said, well, maybe this is a little more close to what you guys are talking about, where social responsibility is this area where organizations and society meet, and you get these stakeholder pressures and challenges of how organizations deal with societal issues. And the environment is actually a superseding problem of the entire thing. It's not just one problem of society, right? So this is one of the diagrams, I think Simon will chat about this a little later. And so that's kind of one of our recommendations, is to start thinking of it this way. The second one of our recommendations is that if they want to be effective in reaching their goals and aims, then they need to have a strategic decision kind of direction. So the other thing that's unique about this and what we're trying to convey here is that you don't just take a decision as an organization and just go across one of them, or back and forth the two, but your decisions need to go both through society and the environment, right? So you can't just make a strategic decision and only consider how that affects the organization, or only consider how it affects the environment. It has to consider all 3 areas when you make a strategic decision. The next one is that there's no point in having a big arrow unless it goes somewhere. So give ourselves something to go. So sustainable society. So the challenge here is an organization, they need to have a direction, and that's really the power of the framework for strategic sustainable development, is that it talks about this definitions for sustainable society that can be this common ground we talked about before, and gives direction. And so this we thought embodied some of the main concepts we're trying to get to them. We don't recommend putting this into ISO or anything like that, but we used it when facilitating discussions with them to kind of demonstrate some of our key concepts and findings. Great.
So, what does that take us? Thank you very much. I never knew what arrows were for.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Neil. Okay, these are the key areas that we're sort of talking about. 3 key themes that basically are transferring within. We're considering and transferring into the ISO document. So, what we found is that again, huge support. Was the need, what we found from the 3rd survey was that there's a huge support for acknowledgement of these 3 concepts in helping organisations move towards an environmentally and socially sustainable society. Obviously very important for moving forward, and something that we needed that's going to be really strong for us to help recommend to our key target. We're given the opportunity, as Anastasia mentioned, to work with ISO and the Swedish Standards Institute to look at how to improve the sustainability of ISO 26000. What we did was develop a 15-page set of recommendations that teased out the key findings from our research. The idea was to inform and sort of lobby, I suppose, what you call it, the decision-making process within ISO. So that's ISO, the Swedish Mirror Group, SIS. The aim of this is to give to other people outside of the Swedish Mirror Group who will decide what goes forward to ISO. So if we can engage many, many other people in the debate to inform then ISO and support what we're trying to do, then that's what we're also trying to achieve. The idea is that also that we're trying to highlight to ISO and the broader CSR community is that unless you really tackle sustainable development in a strategic manner, then all the good work that they do in terms of human rights and consumer relationships and whatever will